Welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning has been on issues affecting those living in Milwaukee. My next guest was elected to the Milwaukee Common Council in 2004. Alderman Ashanti Hamilton represents the 1st Aldermanic District. He has served as the Common Council president, been instrumental in the ongoing revitalization of the 30th Street corridor, and he's committed to job creation, job opportunities, and job security for Milwaukee residents. How are you, Alderman Hamilton?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to be here with you.
Well, I thank you for your time, and it would be ignoring the elephant in the room if I didn't bring up the fact that you recently made headlines by really threatening to kind of camp right outside some areas in your district to make sure trash was cleaned up, and eventually the city came and cleaned it up. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this was one area of the city that I feel like has been really struggling in trying to maintain a quality of life for the residents that live there. And we had been doing a lot of work with building partnerships with both community-based organizations and the constituents that lived in the area, including the businesses and the residents. And one of the partners in making sure that we were making progress in that area has been DPW and DNS and the city departments, Department of City Development. Mm-hmm. And we had made some complaints about some dumping in the area, had made calls about having that stuff picked up. And it had been weeks and stuff had just continued to pile up. And I think that's one of the things that as a city government, that's the one thing that I think we should be able to get right. And we should be able to deliver for the residents that live in neighborhoods, right? And while I was extremely upset with the people who were dumping and creating the trash in the neighborhood, mm-hmm. We should at least, though, be able to deliver on some of the basic city services that residents rely on. And that's one of them. And I think, if we take some of the top priorities of people that live in this city, if we take the crime and safety, we understand that and all of its variations off the table, this would be one of those top priorities, is maintaining a clean, safe, aesthetically pleasing community.
Yeah, I think that's important to all constituents. So let's talk about the fact that you've been in office now 17 years, elected in 2004, as I stated, and that is the same time that Mayor Tom Barrett was elected. He also spent 17 years as mayor, and he most recently announced that he's been invited to become the U.S. ambassador to Luxembourg, which means that he is most likely, if confirmed, going to be leaving office early. And so you have been on Our Issues Milwaukee on many occasions, but the last time you were on the show, you came on to tell us that you changed your mind about running for mayor at that time. So I have to ask you, have you been given thought at all about running for mayor of Milwaukee with this special scenario?
Yeah, under these conditions, this is something I think, anybody who is in public office who wants to serve the people who live in the city, should at least consider. So that is always a consideration. But I've gone through this process, right? And I believe that there are many ways that people can serve the residents of the city, and there are many ways to give back to your community. I used to be gung-ho about holding office and about running for a higher seat and about magnifying the possibility of being able to help my city grow. I'm still committed to that effort, and I want to make sure that other people who are actually holding office with me actually keep the commitments that we make to the residents of the city, and that there's a sincere effort by all the parties to help build a better city.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily committed, to a particular office. And I have not, and I think I've grown through the process of even evaluating, whether or not I wanted to, be the mayor of this city. It's a tremendous responsibility, and it's also a tremendous honor.
Yeah.
But I would want to continue to put myself in a position to serve and advance the interests of the city.
All right. Well, of course, there's a lot of time in between this conversation and what could happen. So we'll just keep our eye on things for sure.
Right.
But with that said, Ashanti, or I should say Alderman Hamilton, of course, we go back and
We go
I've
back.
always...
You can call me Ashanti.
Yes, so I really am interested in talking about public safety because you were on, I think I counted back, it was 5 or 6 years ago. And stolen vehicles and reckless driving was an issue back then. And you had said during that interview that you were not necessarily in favor of harsher penalties, that you were not necessarily wanting to see all people who are guilty of committing these crimes on the streets, stealing cars, reckless driving, being clumped together with repeat offenders. And you also didn't want to necessarily put young people on a pathway to prison. I'm interested in knowing, do you still feel that way? And what are your thoughts about the reckless driving and many of the residents of Milwaukee literally being scared to drive down the street?
Yeah, I've always been supportive of a balanced approach to addressing these issues. One of the things that I've been absolutely clear on is that we have had a tough on crime approach to this in the past. It hasn't produced the results that residents want to see when it comes to actually producing safety in our community, producing these incidents. I want to do what works. And I actually believe that there's a level of enforcement that is absolutely necessary in holding people accountable for their actions, that must play a role in changing people's behavior. And I also believe in intervening early and actually using investments and making our communities more walkable and taking into consideration other forms of communication, mass communication, bikes. I think the scooters have taken hold in the city of Milwaukee as a form of transportation that people are using. But we got to have the infrastructure in the city of Milwaukee that is also friendly to other modes of transportation and not just cars. And so I'll tell you a initiative in the city that's being led by the Villard Avenue Business Association that we're doing on Villard, that is combining all of these efforts in the city to try to combat reckless driving. We're using specialized cameras at intersections to be able to take pictures of license plates, drivers of cars, get descriptions of cars that are violating the law so that we can share that with law enforcement. We're using engineering, putting bump outs in bike lanes along the strip, helping to get businesses to encourage people to actually walk in the area and use other modes of transportation that make accessing their businesses easier. And then we're using things like lighting and signage, to encourage dispelling criminal activity in the area. And hopefully a combination of these things in this particular area of the city, we'll see a reduction in things like reckless driving and criminal activity. Encourage people to be out and about and enjoying the wonderful amenities that the city has to offer. And that's what I think we have to find is that right recipe that actually encourages people to change behavior and make our communities safer and more livable.
Well, there's certainly not an easy solution. So I thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And you know you are always welcome to come on and bring us up to date on all of the issues that are taking place in the city of Milwaukee. Thanks again.
Thank you, Andrea. So good to see you, and I will be giving you a call.
Appreciate it. Same here. Alderman Ashanti Hamilton represents Milwaukee's 1st Aldermanic District, and you can learn where he stands on the issues by again visiting milwaukee.gov. That's going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. As always, thank you for watching, and I do hope you join us again next week as we take another look at our issues, Milwaukee. Have a great day.